Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to Spitting Fire Podcast Faith Edition. And thanks so much for having me back, Bill. Good to have you on the podcast.
Always good to be here, Dubsy. It's been a little while since the last Spitting Fire.
Yeah, we haven't done one for a while. It's been a crazy back end of the year.
It's been smooth flowing, so no need to spit.
No, there's always a good reason to spit, as long as there's flames, yeah. but it's been a cracker last quarter of the year so far. Church has hit a real sweet spot post-Rugby World Cup.
It has, and all we can say is thank you, Jesus. Yeah. We are grateful. Like, you dream of moments where the church finds its like groove and momentum, and you're not sure always what works to get it there. In this case, we don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's been absolutely awesome. Church has been full. People have been excited to be there. Sundays are getting like busier. It's really cool.
It's busting at the seams. You don't know what it takes to get there. What does it take to keep the momentum there?
Tell me, Dubsy. In fact, if you know online, how do you build and sustain momentum in any organization, family, or fill in the blank?
That is a great question.
Yeah, one thing we can be sure of is you got to keep faith up. Like, the church's secret engine is faith. So if that's out the room, well, then there's no need to be there, you know? So that's part of the story.
I also love that as the world seems to wind down before Christmas, the church gets to ramp it up heading into the festive season, and hence the reason for the Faith series. I actually wanted to ask you the question. Obviously, we do a preaching calendar through the year, and we put different series in at different times. Why towards the back end of the year, leading into Christmas, before we start preaching around the birth of Jesus? Why Faith series?
It's a good question. I think we came out of the Heart for the House season, which was amazing. Obviously, a huge highlight for us in our church story this year. Very generous moment in our church. And then kind of came off the back of that and realized, like, there's such a sweet momentum. People have exercised great faith to give. And I felt God stirring me to speak about what it looks like faith to live. Like, we've done it in a moment. Let's speak about it in a way of life. And so it almost wasn't even in the series block. The calendar was a blank, actually, before that. We had the Christmas block there, we had the Heart for the House thing, and then nothing in between. And so faith came up, and I just felt to live in Hebrews 11 for a few weeks. And so it's been epic.
It's been an amazing series. You obviously launched the series off, something out of nothing. A really great start to the series.
Yeah, cool thought. Hey, just a cool reminder. We'd come off the back end, in fact, before that, of a couple of you guys bringing words that were burning in your hearts. So it was quite amazing. You know, God speaking to his church, and people were starting to come and get excited. And I almost thought, okay, you got to remind yourself, when this is happening, when the church is filling up and people are excited and words are burning, God uses, and that's where the phrase came from, nothing to create something. And that's where faith comes alive. So yeah, it was just a nice setup to the series. And Hebrews 11 actually starts like that, saying, everything that is now seen or visible started in the invisible. So something out of nothing.
That's so good. It speaks straight into vision. Because without vision, without imagination, we would never be able to see what the future could possibly look like. So vision plays a key role. I love some of your thoughts around that. Faith is how we access our inheritance. Faith pleases God. It's impossible to please God without him, without faith. Everything starts in the Spirit.
Yeah, I mean, that's power. You know, it's crazy for me. Like, I mean, whether you're a religious or Bible-believing person or not, you got to agree that everything starts in the invisible. Like this table, there was none. Someone thought it. Okay, let's build it. Now there's a table and a mic and a fill in the blank clothing. And so there's a natural kind of flow to that. Like, everything starts in the unseen. In our language, it's in the Spirit. So God gives dreams to people, and dreams become things that we enjoy, you know?
Yeah, it says God is still creating the future by his Spirit, hence faith. So good.
Yeah, because it takes faith to bridge the gap between what you sense in the Spirit or what you see in the invisible and what we can touch one day. Yeah.
So good. Don't let the dream die. This one actually spoke to me quite a bit.
Yeah, that was a moment, yeah.
A couple of bombs you dropped in there. Hope sets the borders and boundaries of our faith for our faith to play in. Was so good. Your faith can't go further than your hope will let you.
Yeah, I think T.D. Jakes kind of spoke about this in one of his messages, and it just blessed me, because I realized often I'll be in a room, you know what it's like. The room's excited, everyone's feeling filled up and fired up, and, like, to use the language, faith is high. And then you wake up on Monday and you wonder why faith doesn't operate the same, you know? And that's where I started realizing, like Hebrews 11 says, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's only as strong as your hope is big. And so I realized, like, to feel faith in the room on a Sunday is because in that room, hope is big. Anything could happen. People are saying things. Stories are being told. On Monday, you're facing a boardroom table or a marriage that's hurting or a whatever, children that aren't figuring life out. And you're thinking, faith doesn't feel the same here. That's not faith. That's hope. What you see around you doesn't seem like it could be bigger or better or more beautiful. And so, yeah, hope's got to kick in because it starts to establish a bigger boundary almost.
Good. You also asked the question, when did the dream die?
Yeah, and everyone in the room just went, oh,
silent. So it was so good. And then encouraged everyone to dream again. Like, actually just get out there and start dreaming. It was so good because post the service in the rap, we actually sat down at Andre Barnard and Kat slept with me on the rap that day. And Andre just started to ask some questions. How do you identify where the dream died? And you got to identify it, when and where, name it, call it out, rename it, and dream again.
You should say it again because probably guys listening to this didn't watch the rap, so...
They probably never. So here we go. If you didn't watch the rap, this is it. Where did the dream die? You got to identify it, when and where, name it, call it out, rename it, and start to dream again. Boom. So figure out where the dream died, start dreaming again. God's got so much more for us.
Yes, and again, just to go back to where you started, when that dream starts to come alive again, and it can be anything. Every kid has dreams, and they mature over time, but you don't want them to die. You just want them to redefine themselves, not die. And so what you just said now, that framework helps you redefine the dream, and that goes back to what you're saying. It sets wider borders of hope. Hope is dreaming, and then faith gets to activate the things that take us toward it. Yeah.
Brilliant. In your opinion, how often should we be redefining the dream? Should it be something we revisiting regularly to not allow it to die? Because I think sometimes we get too far gone with the dream and then go...
Yeah, I think that's a good question. You know what I think, like, I don't know the answer to it, but I feel like there are moments to pause and dream elaborately. Like, let's map out the future, dream boards and all those kind of things. But I think we have a daily responsibility to push that flywheel. So you have to at least think on, nudge the dream a little bit every day in your quiet time or whatever you call that. Yeah.
So when you start to dream, make sure that you're pushing the flywheel of the dream daily, nudging it in the direction, and start redefining and reshaping that as you move toward the dream.
And it can be as much as giving yourself permission.
Yeah.
Let's say you dream of, in my case, speaking in new environments. Let's just use that as an example. I hope that I will have the opportunity to speak in global environments, let's say. So every single day, I just need to give myself permission to imagine, just for a moment, what it would look like to speak in Buenos Aires, let's say, or London or whatever. Just quick dream. Thank you, Jesus, that's still alive, and then move on with my day.
So good. That's where the dream starts. That's faith. Awesome. Then he jumps into the faith series, Faith 2.0. Best title I think you've ever preached. Absolutely loved it. And another little TD Jake slogan there, faith never goes out of style.
Yeah, beautiful.
I wrote that big and bold. Faith never goes out of style. But your 3 points, a word that burns, the humility to hear, and faith for feet.
Yeah. I guess a little bit more practical than week one. Week one was more of a kind of nudge toward, hey guys, God builds something out of nothing. Faith still matters. It's just a kind of poking the box of hope. Second week was saying, how does faith get into us? Faith comes by hearing by the word of God. But there's a progression to that, So it's the word that burns, that jumps out the scripture into your heart. We all know those moments where something feels like it was just for you or just for me. You've said it to me, I've said it to you. But then you got to take that word that burns and I think have the humility to actually hear on it. To go, God, I'm willing to believe that was you speaking, which takes great humility because it's better when it's like, most people want to make their own decisions and be responsible for their own successes. It's the back to front kingdom. It's in some ways us responding to his voice and his decisions and his story in our lives. And although we get to experience the success, we kind of owe it to him. So that takes humility to go, God's spoken, I'm going to do it. It doesn't make sense. And the credit's going to be his. And then obviously the feet to move in a direction.
And I love that statement that faith is measured by feet, not feeling.
Yeah, I like that too.
It's
I
so
stole
good.
that from someone, Dubsy.
But that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to someone.
Yeah, good preachers borrow, great preachers steal. So, Shout out to someone, whoever that was. It's just faith is action.
Yeah, measured by feet. Yeah,
measured by feet.
Hope
not
is
by
that
feelings.
dream factor. Hope is
Yes.
that it's got a dream factor to it. It's beyond what we're sitting in. Faith is right here. It's the substance of things hoped for. It's what we're actually doing with what we dream.
Faith has feet, people. Faith has feet.
And to encourage anybody listening to this, feet doesn't mean that you're leaping. Like, faith in the church has sometimes been this like mystical experience for a few, where they say, I've got faith for, and it just sounds so big. It sounds like, they're going to do something that's just humanly impossible. Actually, I think faith is the everyday small step obedience that one day looks like it was impossible. So just shout out. If you're thinking, man, I don't have faith for the big things. Actually, faith is for the small things. God will take care of the big things.
Sometimes faith is just standing in tough times. Get on your feet, stand up, and trust God in their season. Measured by feet. So good.
Encourage somebody who's wondering what to do next. Stand. Take a step.
Yeah. Hear God and move. Then week 3 of the Faith series. Must have been Faith 2.1. Because the week before was 2.0. Don't really have a name.
I think I called it a journey of faith, maybe, something like that.
It was a journey of faith. And it was a great message. Held up in Haran.
Did you feel like you've ever been held up in Haran, Dubsy?
Yeah, numerous times. Feel like I'm on a journey to somewhere else. Get caught in a season or moments in life where I shouldn't be. Lose focus for a little while. And then get back on the road to where God's called you to.
I like what you said just now. You said, I feel like I've been there many times. So good, because sometimes we preach a message like, don't get held up in Haran. People think if they make a decision that day and deal with whatever their Haran looks like, maybe we'll speak about that, that they think, okay, Haran's done now. I'll live in Canaan for the rest of my life. But what you said is important. I go there from time to time, which is to say, as humans, we end up in Haran frequently. And we've got to keep breaking that cycle to move into whatever our Canaan is, yeah.
Brilliant. So the goal is not to settle in Haran.
Exactly. So whenever you feel like, because here's what it feels like. We spoke about like moving to Canaan, and it says Abraham moved into land, and it said he felt like a foreign or stranger in that land. So when you live by faith, the land you've been called to often feels foreign.
Correct.
But over time, that will start to feel familiar. And that's when Haran starts to become the question again. So when something that was foreign initially, because I've never been there before, I've tried something fresh, I've given in faith, moved in faith, married in faith, whatever. Now it's very familiar. And in some ways, I'm stuck in my ways. Well, it's no longer Canaan, that's Haran again. And so Haran and Canaan are physical pictures actually of a spiritual kind of pattern. Got to keep breaking the Haran space and entering the Canaan space.
Why don't you define Haran again one more time? I think that's something that can be sort of skipped over as you're listening to this. But how do you find yourself in Haran? Settling in Canaan for too long, becoming familiar with your surroundings.
Yeah.
The lack of faith to keep going.
Yeah, I think it's all those things, right? Haran as a name means frustration or burn up with anger. And so it's quite a nice way of connecting the dots back to where's your Haran? Where have you been held up, let's say? It's in those places where there's a burning frustration or a niggle or an anger or I just can't figure life out. And it's not always playing out terribly bad. It's just something's burning and I need to break camp here. And so that's how you know you're in Haran. Canaan actually speaks of a bended knee. And so Haran is almost this place of like slight frustration or angst or this burning desire for more. And like when you break that camp, whatever that is, the decision you make, the changes you make to your life habits, whatever, when you break that and move toward Canaan, it should feel a sense of like, I've had to bend my knee here. Like this has had to be me bowing in my own strength to trust God again. And again, you can see the difference. When that humility to trust God in a foreign land shifts back to, I'm actually really frustrated here again, well, then you're bouncing between those two worlds. I think it's a nice tension between if you're in the will of God, there's a sense of humility and I've got a bended knee and I'm not in control of everything. Haran is, I am in control, but I'm very frustrated. So
that's powerful. You actually had a cool moment with the dads as well, and you charge the dads in that message to take their kids to some foreign land, this places and spaces God's called them to.
Yeah, so cool. Which is what Abraham's dad did for him. Abraham's dad broke the Babylonian kind of culture, which was building empires for themselves. His name was Terah, and he took Abraham. Why not? And he took Abraham from wherever they were by Babylon to Haran. So it was a good move. But that was where it triggered. It was like, at some stage, dads, you got to break your sons out the culture of that day and teach them to live by faith.
So good. Don't get stuck in Haran. Keep moving and help those around you. Maybe it's spiritual sons and daughters as well. Actually,
so good.
Have a look at them. Take them to some foreign land God's called them to, because it's going to train them to keep moving when they get stuck in Iran when they're older.
So good. And that could be anything. It could be like, put your arm around them and say, hey, buddy, I just see more for your life. Or, hey, young girl, I just see you're beautiful. God is just challenging you to really trust that you've got something unique to offer this world. It can be something as simple as that. Or it could be investing in their future, giving them a gap, taking them on a trip, whatever. But yeah, it's just really believing that there are ways to change the generational cycles. And dads, we have permission to do some of that.
We do. We actually had a memorial of a good friend recently, and looking at their family up on the platform, there were siblings, there were aunts and uncles, there were children, and it was amazing to see a picture of a family that trajectory was changed by one person's decision in the generations above.
Exactly. And shout out to the Wills family.
Shout out to them. They're an amazing family, but someone in that genealogy made a call to change the trajectory of their family, and the picture of what they did probably 2 or 3 generations up was displayed in the auditorium that day. It was an incredible picture of what generational change can take place when one man or woman stands up and makes a call to follow God.
And this is so good, because if you go back to the Abraham story, he goes to Canaan and says, and he pitched his tent in a foreign land, as did Isaac and Jacob, his sons. So 3 generations lived in tents. Like, we don't like to live in tents. We want
beautiful brick and mortar homes.
Correct, because then it's all worked out.
And it becomes familiar.
Which is fine when you're defining a home to sleep in. It's not a good place to live in when you're defining a destiny to inherit. And so I think when it comes to like looking at Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they all lived in tents. There's a willingness for the man to change generations and realize this could take a few generations. Yeah, my children will be better than I was. I'm better than my folks were. Shout out, folks. But the whole point is that generations get stronger.
Absolutely. So good. And also just in a faith context, like, let's not build homes, just live in tents.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Because I think that's where
be willing to move.
Absolutely. And sometimes the physical picture of where we live doesn't have to be the same as the spiritual picture of where we live. We can live in beautiful homes, but let's build our faith in tents.
And again, you'll know if the spiritual place you're living in, the home, if you want to call it that, you'll know if it's time to break that camp and move again if you feel frustrated or you're burning or something's out. God's trying to move you. Yeah.
Actually, years ago, you said something. You said, unhealthy frustration leads to destruction. Healthy frustration leads to movement.
That's awesome.
So there's nothing wrong with a healthy frustration in a faith environment, because God's just calling you to more.
Totally. And actually, I listened to a guy, Will Gadara. He's one of the restaurateurs in the world, number 1 in the world at one stage, New York, number 1. And he said something interesting. He said one of the secrets to his success was letting anger burn and not putting it out. And he broke that down to say, like, there's this burn in a man. Shout out to just the men for a moment. There's this burn in us that sometimes in a world today has been crushed. Don't do that. You need to be more, let's use words like self-aware, and you need to manage your emotions more. And I get it. That's good. That's good stuff. But what we've done is we've snubbed out the flame of fire that burns in the heart of the masculine soul. And that thing is powerful. That thing helps us win games. That thing helps us be brave. That thing helps us climb mountains. And so I need to add this to our conversation. Like, when it comes to faith, part of it is a frustration that burns. And it's not your responsibility to snub it out. It's your responsibility to direct it toward a great outcome.
Brilliant. So good.
It's like a little boy that's hot and he's keen to do something. And you say, just calm down. Worst thing you can do. Yeah.
You got to keep the burn of the little boy, but you got to channel it in the right direction.
Give him a big tree to climb or something.
Take him out to the farm.
Yeah. If we have I just need to hang here for a moment. If we have a society that is calmed down to a blur, it's in decline.
Correct.
Because as Craig Mandel was teaching us yesterday, we're either growing or dying. That there's no neutral states in life. Either you're living or you're dying. That's just how life works. And so again, when it comes to the things of like, hey, just calm down. What we're trying to do is neutralize society like that. There's no contention, there's no clash, there's no just everybody calm down to neutral. There is no neutral.
Nah, you agrees.
Yeah, so either I'm burning up and there's somewhere I'm going to go with this,
So good.
or I've shut things down and it's my world's getting small.
You got to keep moving and you got to keep growing. Otherwise, you're going to regress. So don't take the burn out the boy.
That'll preach.
Don't take the burn out of the boy. Keep the flame alive. Let it burn, boy. So good. And then Tess jumped in just last week, and I thought it was brilliant. She actually spoke about faith raising the standard. And she got 3 points. Faith raises the standard of conviction. Faith raises the standard of confession. And faith raises the standard of authority. It was so powerful.
Gave a practical example as well. Used our visa story, obviously the visa getting denied, and us thinking it was so in God's will, And the moment it got denied, I mean, nothing like that's ever been. We've never had denial, Maybe deferred, but not denied. Anyway, it happened, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, God, I thought this was you." And he said, "And so what will you say of me now?" That was kind of her setup. And she said, at that moment, I realized, I will say of the Lord, He is my rock and my refuge, my God in whom I trust. So it raises our confession, our standard, our authority. It's just amazing, yeah.
Very, very good. So why a faith series now? What do we look forward to moving into faith into 2024? Lots going on. But what do you got faith for?
Oh, that's a big question.
Don't look too far.
Yeah, I'll try not to. I think this December is going to be a significant one for our church. I really do. I feel like our faith series has set substance up for this December to be a sweet one, for families to really feel breakthrough in their homes this December. That for me is what I've got faith for. I think many families have been journeying through conversations, again, between husbands and wives, between parents and children, maybe even extended family. I've got faith that at the core of this Christmas, there will be a really sweet, restful moment for families, my own included. And so, yeah, if you're listening, that's what I've got faith for. And then, of course, going into New Year, I've got faith that we would totally be convinced of what God has called us to. Not the material things that will follow, but that we will just have a genuine assurance that as we go into 2024, we've got calling on our lives, there's destiny in our lives, we're born for things, and we can be settled and sure that God will do something with that.
So good.
Nutshell.
In a nutshell, you have destiny, you have calling, you have faith to move into everything God's called you to into 2024. So let's grab it by the horns and head into the year with courage and conviction.
Exactly. That's actually what we've got faith for. Let's hit the year with courage and conviction.
So good.
Yeah.
It's been a great chat, Bill, and a great way to wrap up a good conversation, I think, is just looking at 2024. Any final thoughts?
No, I just appreciate you.
Thank you. And I appreciate you. And I love these moments. I know sometimes they go off in all different types of directions, but that's what we love about them. And it's just so good to actually, on the back end of what's been an incredibly impactful series for so many, on the back end of, right in the middle of incredible momentum, heading into a season where we're going to be creating memories as a church, and into exciting 2024. Great moment just to catch moments. And
I mean, just to elaborate on appreciating you, the reality is I think you're a great bridge builder. And so between a conversation that's happening in the room called faith or whatever it is, and a world that may listen to this, who knows who dials into this podcast, Spitting Fire, who knows, maybe it goes global. Let's believe it. But I think what you do well is bridge that gap between some deep, profound God thoughts and what it looks like to just land in people's everyday life. So I appreciate you, bro, and your family.
I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you and yours. You're a legend. Hey, thanks so much for joining us for Spitting Fire podcast today. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can grab some more material right over here, or you can jump onto Pastor Dill's YouTube channel, which will be up here. Otherwise, have a cracker festive season, and we will catch you for some more Spitting Fire in early 2024. Ciao, ciao.